Hi there and welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be showing a project that I did in the front yard to spruce up the curb appeal of the house. I put in a patio between my sidewalk, the front stoop, the driveway, and the house. For years that area has been a planter. When we first moved in, the house came with shrubberies out in the front. There was boxwoods and some other shrubs, but eventually they got sick and died out. And I didn't want to put any more shrubs in there and cover up the windows and have to keep trimming them. So we decided to just go with daylilies and hostas. Well, fortunately, they only grew in the summer. They did great. They looked fantastic while they were out there. We split them several times. They're very healthy. But in the winter time, we were left with just a dirt area. I usually mulched it, but still, it wasn't very appealing. And I wanted to do something different with that area. Well, my wife came up with the idea of putting in a patio. And I really liked it. I thought that we could make that a pretty nice area, put a couple of chairs, maybe a bistro set or something out there just to make it attractive. So I had several options. One of them was to do a concrete patio, and the other was to do it with pavers. I've put in paver patios before. I really didn't want to do the work it was going to take to level out the slope for the pavers. I thought it would be easier to put up a form and just pour the concrete. So that's what we decided to do. I was going to prep the area, lay out the forms, and pour the concrete myself. I've done work like this before, but I'm no expert. I can get it roughly nice, but not as nice as a professional can do it. Well, it just so happens that out in the front of my house, the county was putting in a new water main. They've been working out there for the past several months. Really started in early March. And they had to dig up the old main and put in a new main. And in the process of doing that, there was a lot of destruction done to our front yards and driveways. Well, after the crew came in and finished putting in the water main, they had a concrete crew come in and do the remediation for driveways. A lot of my neighbors didn't have new driveways, and their driveways were 25 and 30 years old. So they got a pretty good deal in getting their whole driveway refinished and not just the part that was demoed during the install of the water main. So they were giving pretty good deals to these folks since they were here and they were already doing part of their driveway. So I decided to ask them, hey, can you guys come over here and form this out and do my patio for me? And they were happy to do it. They agreed, and they gave me a really good price that I was very happy with. And also, the foreman who came and looked at the area gave me a great idea how to lay it out. It's very similar to what I wanted. I wanted about an 18-inch gap between the sidewalk and driveway and the patio. And I wanted to use that as a planter for some boxwoods. But he suggested that we build a step, even with the bottom step on the stoop, over on the side next to the stairs leading up to the front door. So I love the design idea he came up with, and we decided to go with them to do all the work. And I was pretty happy with that because I really wasn't looking forward to doing that work myself. So the first step in this was to remove all of the plants, the hostas and the daylilies, out of the front. These plants have been there a long time. They were very strong, and I could use them in the backyard to do some bordering on patios and some of the rivers I have in the back. So I got busy with that. I dug out the hostas first. I took several of them and I planted them along my patio in the backyard to separate a grass area in the patio. I like hostas. They grow back every year. They're hardy. And as you can see as I'm doing this, you could be pretty rough with them. I just split them. I just cut them with a shovel and put them in the ground. As soon as they get some water and sunlight, they'll perk right back up and they'll grow great. I planted the hostas on the other side of the yard alongside one of my dry riverbeds. And the daylilies I planted along the new river I put in this year. That's a drainage from my arbor area. So a day later, they came to do the concrete pour. They did it in the middle of the afternoon. So the truck showed up, and they had it out in the street, and they had to wheelbarrow the concrete from the truck to the front of the house to pour the form. I got a few videos of the workers, and it looked like they were doing a great job. The surface of it was looking great. They had nice deep joints. I love the way that looks, and it had a nice curve around the front. However, I was still concerned about those pins where they had put them on the inside of the form. I've never seen that done. I don't know how they were going to make it smooth and surface the area, but they said they could do it. As they were finishing the concrete, as I said, they were doing a great job on the surface and how they did the joints. The curb looked great. However, I saw one of the foremen with one of the workers standing over the pins on the inside of the concrete on the step area, and I could tell they were concerned. And then when I watched, they had to get a pipe wrench and twist out the pins, and it really tore up the concrete pretty seriously. They redid the form after that with some boards going across the sidewalk to brace the form instead of having the pins on the inside. And they put some quickset cement on the inside of it, and they said that was going to work and everything was going to turn out fine. The following day, the workers showed up and removed the forms. This was a Friday morning, and as soon as they took the forms off, I went outside to look at it, and I couldn't wait. I was very excited. The anticipation was killing me to see how nice this was going to look. Well, the surface of it looked great, but as you could see in these pictures here, the remediation that they did on that step just didn't work. The cement was two different colors. The concrete that they poured was one, and then the quickset looks like they just put quickset mortar to try and fill in the areas where the pins were. It looked terrible. The front of it was all uneven and cracked, and it just looked terrible. And that was going to be the curb appeal part of this patio. That step was going to be facing the street. It's really got to look nice. So the foreman showed up in a little while, and he told me he was going to have one of his workers go get a grinding wheel, and he was going to grind the face of that to make it smooth. Now, I've done some cement work before. I don't think this would work. And I told him my concerns, and I said, you're just going to spend a lot of time making it look worse. I don't get worked up over these things. I know they're going to make it right eventually, how they're going to do it. But, you know, you just got to be cool and talk to these people, and everything's going to work out. And it always does. So not long after that, probably 2 hours, the owner of the company came by, and he told me that he was going to have the entire patio tore out and reform and do the whole thing over again. He said he wasn't satisfied, and that's not the kind of work that he wants to be. That's not the kind of work he wants anybody to see that his company did. So a few days later, they showed up in the morning with the excavator and started tearing out the patio. Unfortunately for the workers, they couldn't get the skid steer on the driveway. They didn't want to mess up the driveway, and they didn't want to take it in my yard and tear up any more grass. So the excavator broke up the concrete, and the workers had to load the debris into a wheelbarrow and wheel it out to the street. And then the excavator took it down to another area where they were dumping debris. This looked like some really rough work, and I felt bad for the guys that had to do it. So they finished the excavation, and then a couple of days later they came and reset the forms at about 5 o'clock in the evening because they wanted to get it repoured the next day at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I didn't pay much attention when they were setting the forms, but after they left, I came back, and the way the form was set was different. The front step wasn't the same. They didn't have the same angles, and also they put the pins on the inside again. I was really concerned about this, so I called the owner of the company, and I told him that, hey, I'm really concerned. They put the pins on the front again, and also the way the step was placed the first time, the way his first foreman that came by had designed it, it wasn't set that way. So he told me that everything would be fine, and I said, well, listen, if you leave the pins like that and don't get that form reset, just don't pour it, because you're going to end up tearing out again, because it's not what I want. And if you don't tear it out, I'm going to have to pay somebody to do it. You know, at this time I was becoming more of a confrontation. Nothing heated, just I wanted to get what I wanted. And so he told me the next day he could come by at 6 a.m. because he had to be somewhere. So I said, that's great. Why don't you come over? We'll discuss it. So we did. So I made some coffee. He came over at 6 a.m. It was still dark out. And he told me his guys were going to show up at 7. They were going to set the form. He had the original foreman that had done the design for the patio was going to come over and supervise the whole thing. I was happy with that. When the first worker showed up about 7, he explained to him what was going on, and that he got to work right away. So when the other foreman came, I saw what they were doing, and they were setting the patio with the forms the way I wanted it to be done. The owner thought they could do it with the pins again, but when the first foreman, who I dealt with from the very beginning, came by, he said, no, we're not doing that. We're doing this the way I want it. It's got to be, that front step, the face of it's got to be perfect. So they did. Well, I had to leave. I had some things I had to do and appointments I had to keep that day. At this point, I trusted these guys. I mean, they tore it all out. They were going to redo it again. So I left. And while I was out, I got a video from the owner. They had set it in the morning, and around noon they took the forms off, and he sent me a video of how the patio looked. Now, I tell you what, they did a bang-up job. They really did. I'm happy that I did confront the situations that I did, and I'm really happy with the company, the way they completed this patio. It looks great. I couldn't wait to start planting and doing the things I wanted to do with the patio to make the house look nicer. They did a bang-up job, and I can't thank them enough. Before I could plant in that area between the sidewalk, the driveway, and the patio, I had to do some preparation to the soil. That soil in there really hasn't been touched in years, and we have a lot of hard clay here in Georgia. So as I went, I got my shovel and my rake and started clearing out the debris. There was still some crush and run and some cement and debris from the patio, gravel and whatnot. So I got my rake, got my shovel, and started clearing that out. It was a little bit harder work than I thought it was going to be, but I got it done. I got all the debris out, and I got it, dumped it all. I laid out the boxwoods in the pattern that I wanted and the spacing that I wanted. So I dug it up, added some garden soil, and got these planted. After I planted them, I worked on planting the topiary. And that's a boxwood as well, so it's a taller variety, and so I got that in the ground. And after I completed that, I mulched out the area and got them watered in pretty good. After I finished that project, I took some of the pots I have in the backyard with already robust flowers growing in them, and I put them on the front. And I really liked the way this was coming together. Within the next few days, I added a few more pots, and I took a set of wrought iron chairs and a small end table from my backyard on one of the patios, and I put it in the front. I don't spend a lot of time out there, but since it was new, I was excited to sit out there and have a cool drink in the evening and chat with the neighbors as they walk by, walking their dogs, or just out for a nice walk. So this project turned out great. I'm very happy with it. There was a little challenge along the way, but as I said, I just keep my cool and keep working with these contractors, and as long as you're cool with them, they'll be good with you. So if you made it through this far in the video and enjoyed it, please give it a like. Maybe even drop a comment on the thoughts you might have for decorating a patio like this in the front yard to increase curb appeal. If you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing. Thank you, and have a great day.